and thank you for pulling up a chair and having a seat at the table here on Chronicles of EMS. We're going to take on a rather serious topic, not that our topics aren't usually serious, but we're going to talk about communications in EMS. As a paramedic and EMT, we all arrive on scenes with patients who may not speak the language we speak, may not have the same education that we have, but more importantly, may have some sort of condition or background which does not allow them to communicate with us in the same manner that we're used to. My name is Justin Schorr, American Paramedic, and your host.
And my name is Louise Setla from Signing Families.
I'm Elsie Kuzel. I'm the training coordinator for Alameda County AMR and the mother of a son with autism.
Sam Bradley, paramedic for a very long time, and I do consulting, QI, and EMS training for fire.
Great, and we're going to not only talk about different conditions that come up, like I said, and we're going to talk about different ways to communicate with some of these folks. But let's start with, if you don't mind, autism. As a father of two young girls, I was told to watch out for something called the autism spectrum, and yet that was never explained to me. Could you explain it for me and our audience? What is the autism spectrum?
Huge spectrum. So the best way to explain it is there are certain behaviors that are considered autistic. So if you can pick out, like a cafeteria, 6, I think, of these behaviors, then your child will fit under this diagnosis. And so that's, if you can imagine, if you have 12 different plates on the table and then you pick 6 of them, you can have a whole different type of mix and matching of different behaviors. So the most common behavior, I think, is the whole eye contact thing, where people with autism won't look at you in the eye. So they'll be looking over here or looking over there. They typically, when they speak to you, they'll be saying something to you, but then they're not looking at you.
So that's the most common.
I think so.
Okay.
That I've seen with with my son and then all his friends.
All right. What are now of those 6 plates? I'm sure we could spend hours upon hours talking about what makes certain persons autistic. Can you give me 2 more of maybe the top things to look for that maybe as a paramedic walking into a scene, they're talking to me but they're looking away? What are 2 other things that might lead me down the road to autism?
It's called echolalia. So if they're verbal, okay, and we can go into the whole sign thing different, but if they're verbal, that you might ask them a question like, "Hey, what's your name?" And they'll, "What's your name?" And they might have a little rock.
Okay.
So that would be 2 things. So they would repeat what you say, and they may or may not be able to answer you.
All right.
So.
And then one more.
And one more is definitely this repetitive motion. So it might be rocking, it might be hand flapping.
Okay. Would it be safe to say that my experience in watching Dustin Hoffman in Rain Man could lead me down the right road? Is that an accurate portrayal of what I'm looking for? No, not really.
No, I'm a psychologist, and actually, like you were saying, Elsie, there's this huge umbrella category of autism. So that child could have Asperger's and still be categorized as autistic, meaning that they're very relatable and they will make some eye contact and they will have decent communication, all the way to the child who doesn't even have any verbal or sign communication, does a lot of the extraneous behaviors. What I find is the relatability is a big red flag, but also the way that they use their senses. So what they smell may be different than what you smell. What they sense as far as what they see, how the sounds, they're very sound sensitive. And they tend to flee. I think in a kind of a crisis mode, they would either tend to flee into a corner or flee into an open space, but far away from people and towards unrelatable things, such as trees or water or something like that.
So it's safe to say that the way that the media has portrayed these conditions is not as realistic as we'd hoped. Where have we seen that before? Stuff on TV, not accurate. So in my own experience, I've come in contact with what I believe would be considered low-functioning autism, not able to communicate verbally, mostly blind, a lot of learning disabilities, but the few that I've come in contact with come from very loving families. I want to get back real quick to the spectrum. Has it always been the autism spectrum? It seems in recent years that the spectrum is growing. This umbrella that you mentioned seems to be getting bigger and including more learning disabilities.
Definitely.
Is it still fair to call it the autism spectrum, or are we just kind of sweeping other things under the umbrella?
I think it's both, personally.
I think you're right.
And I think for 2 different reasons. One is as these behaviors, they even like in retrospect are speculating that some people had autism. You know, Albert Einstein being one of them, and there's a couple other, I can't think of them right this second. But like she was saying, you go from extremely high functioning, which is more the Asperger's end, and then to the other end, where non-functional, maybe there will be some kind of able to relate to another human being, and it might be one human being, either a family, an aide, a teacher, something like that. But it's so big because of, like I was telling you, that whole you pick a few symptoms, pick a few behaviors. That just, I mean, you can imagine that's a color palette. You know, there's a whole world of possibilities that are there, and they're finding that people who are having problems communicating, it's not so much, oh, they're not listening or they're not paying attention. It's because they really, what they hear, the sensory, it's almost like being dyslexic auditorily.
Okay.
Right?
So we've definitely got issues trying to communicate with these folks, especially in an emergency situation. They're going to be worried and scared. The family's going to be worried and scared. We shouldn't just discount this as, oh, he's a little bit slow. We definitely need to take into account approaching these people. How can I approach someone in this condition and make it more comfortable for them? Is there anything I can do, say maybe not touch them? Should I raise my voice, lower my voice? What are just a couple tips I can use to approach someone who I've been told is autistic?
I say the number one thing is to go use an interpreter.
Okay.
Right? So you want to have somebody who is very familiar with this child and or adult and go through them, right? That would probably be the most helpful and the most non-confrontational with the person, right? Other than that, you just go slowly into the situation. Don't expect them to respond like an average human being and you'll be okay. Right, as far as the don't touching thing, that's only a handful of them,
Okay.
or it could be several of them. But you know, the loudness, the softness, they're so different in so many different ways. You got to really feel their way, your way into it. And the other thing too, I got to tell you is, not all of them have mental retardation. Not all of them are cognitively slow. So they could see you in a uniform and know that you work on an ambulance or you're a police officer or a nurse or a doctor, and they know that you're in a position to help, and they know these things, and they'll allow, depending upon the age and maturity, right? They can allow for you guys to make mistakes too.
Yeah.
It also depends on the situation. So if it's a hospital situation where they're coming in to the ER, that's much different than a school situation where they're being evacuated. So in the sense of a school situation, when I do workshops and seminars, I tell them, like, for instance, if they're in a school nurse, they're more likely the child who doesn't relate well with people, so the lower end of the spectrum, to relate better with shiny things such as a slinky. If you had one of these on your rig and can give it to a child, then that would help build a bridge of something they do relate to, and help to usher them out in a crisis situation.
So we're leading them out with
right, because you could be sitting there saying,
such.
hurry, 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 and they're getting more scared because the situation's becoming more volatile. The sounds, the smells, the touch, maybe some children don't want the touch, but this they relate to, something shiny, something circular. This is the bridge to help you usher a child out to safety.
And this can also, speaking as a fireman, this will also get firemen out of the danger zone. 'Cause
Yeah,
it's shiny, and you can
Right.
play
I
with
was
it.
gonna say
Come on,
that.
guys, we need to evacuate.
Yes,
We can get 'em out.
exactly,
But
on
it-
your downtime here.
You know, so many ambulances, they stock the little bears. They stock the little bears up on a shelf, and maybe a
Right.
kid looks at a bear and, you know, I mean, my daughters now would be like, oh, where's the Tinkerbell? You know?
Right.
But it isn't
Where's the-
shiny, so
where's
that
the
wouldn't
princess?
work as
No,
well.
no,
But you can
because a lot
change
of
the
children
shade,
like
you
the
can
shiny.
change the way the light comes to it. I can tell.
Right.
Notice I'm playing
You
with
know,
it.
Yeah.
they might
you know.
actually have something already with them.
That's true,
Something
too.
that they stim on, right?
Oh, thank you so much. Free
one
stuff
of my
on the
son's
show.
friends, he loves string. So you know, all you need, and that's not shiny, but you know what I'm saying. So they
Yeah.
might already have something that they're with, and or the caretaker or the teacher or the aide or the parent, family member, they might know what they like, and you could just sort of use that and
They're a good conduit.
Yeah, and that's going to be important to try to look for those things, because we may come across this person as the only survivor of a car accident,
Yes.
or alone on a city bus,
Exactly.
or in a school, or in a mall, any sort of public situation where they are out of their comfort zone, and they maybe don't have the interpreter, you know, or
Right.
teacher or the hospital that has all the resources. So knowing that we can get something simple and use that kind of, come with me, maybe try some of our signs we'll talk about in another show.
I think the key is really to be aware that you can escalate as a first responder. You can escalate the situation and make it a dangerous situation. Like she was saying, many kids with autism flee. So they'll run away from you, they'll go into traffic, they'll get hit by a car, So if you understand that the way that you are approaching this person can escalate how they're feeling and make them anxious and jet off, which is probably the most dangerous thing. And then the other thing would be they might hit or bite or spit or kick or something because they don't know who you are.
It's a defensive mechanism.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're not angry
Exactly.
because of their condition.
No.
They're angry because they're scared. And the same exact thing would happen to me.
And I have to add this, and just to add into that, they might kick or bite or spit or whatever, and then it's just not a good idea to just take them down and restrain them, because now you've caused this psychological trauma in this person, and the next time they see somebody in a uniform, you don't even have to approach them. They're going to be running off.
Yeah, and that's especially going to be difficult when we follow our altered mental status protocols that require us to get a blood sugar from these patients.
Yeah.
That is going to be a fight. So if we can put them at ease with some of these techniques you've been telling us, approaching them in a certain manner, and without being degrading, almost approaching them as I would a child, trying to understand that they may not know who I am or why I'm there, but if I approach them openly,
You have to move
maybe
it
they'll
slowly.
maybe
and
they'll just
establish
know
your
that I'm
rapport
there.
with
I'm
them.
not a
Yeah.
threat. We'll worry about trusting me later. Let's establish that I'm not there to hurt
Exactly.
them
Right.
and move forward slowly.
There's an excellent website called The Spirit of Autism, written by a mother. It's a blog and a website. And the mom is an EMT and the parent of a child with autism. And she says the number one place where a lot of children with autism go to is water. So if you're counting heads at a school and you come up without the child because the child has fled, look for a body of water, such as a pool.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Now, also as a mother of an autistic child, do you send him out with ID, with labels, anything in the pockets that if
Medical
something
record.
like this happens, that I would be able to get in touch with you?
I did initially, but that's, this is funny because he'll throw it away or, like you
Yeah.
put a bracelet on him and,
It disappears.
So Medic Alert is actually starting this new partnership with the Autism Society, Safe and Sound, and autism specific, right? And other people with developmental disabilities that there's a break in communication where there's shoe tags, there's different types of medallions and things that you can wear to identify. But for me personally, no, the answer is no. But my son is verbal for the most part. You couldn't have a conversation with him, but he can tell you his name and he can tell you who his mom is and so he can
Good.
tell you his address.
Great. And what are some of the resources in your community for a parent with a child with autism?
That is a really good question. Honestly, other parents is probably the number one best
Sounds like the
resource.
blogs you were referring to.
Yeah.
The resource.
Yeah.
Regional centers, most areas have regional centers, and they're a great resource as far as your child being in the community. As far as the age of 3 to, I think it's 22, might be 21, the school district, it's the money thing. So who's responsible? The regional center will say that the school district is going to be responsible for quite a bit of the child services from the age of 3 to 21, I think.
Through 21.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Psychologists know that by heart.
So in looking at the resources that are available for the autism spectrum now, and we discussed it seems to kind of be growing and picking things up, comparing that to Down syndrome and the way that Down syndrome originally in the 50s was seen as kind of like, oh, those kids can go play together, and now I've got an uncle with Down syndrome who's almost 55, living on his own. It seems like those resources have grown in the last 50 years and are able to give these folks
Right.
pretty regular lives. Where are we with autism on that?
I think a lot of that depends on everybody else, to be quite honest with you. We can go
Like me,
one
everybody
way
else, or-
yes, like
Okay.
the world.
All right.
Everybody else. How willing are you to be tolerant of somebody with a behavior that, quite frankly, you don't understand, and it scares you. You know, just last night we were at dinner outside, and you know, I try to keep my son's behaviors so that it's okay to be outside. So I tell him no eeing and no flapping at the table when we go to dinner, which he'll have a monotonous ee that he does, and then the flapping thing. And you know, but other people will be staring and they feel uncomfortable, and you can tell because you can feel it in the room.
Do you think they feel uncomfortable for him or for you?
For them, yeah, because it's something that they don't understand. I think most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah, not for me. Yeah, that's a whole other subject. That's when you get your little mommy group together and talk about that.
Yeah, great. Well, are there any other resources, anything you want to let EMTs know about dealing with autism or other behavioral emergencies?
Well, I do know that Dennis DeBow has Autism Risk Management. I think that's the name of it, autismriskmanagement.com. So there's a website there for first responders. There could probably be a little bit more on the bridge from EMS, because we take care of them, right?
Yeah.
That's a little bit more focused on the police interacting with people with autism. So the Autism Society, definitely, and then just within your own community, you'll find some people, and it's so pervasive that you know, if you just talk to some people, you can find those.
I was going to say, we're
hubs.
learning more and more. The best way to learn about our community in EMS is to go out and actually talk to our community.
Right. It depends on what you're looking for, too. So if you're looking for the generic explanation of what to look for, Autism Speaks is a very good one for the overall, any of the psychology associations or social work associations. If you're looking for groups to network with parents, groups like Kyle's Treehouse, Our Journey Through Autism, The Spirit of Autism, those are all very strong mom-centered blogs with regional and also state and federal information included. And they're expanding, but there's a lot of advocacy, I think, is probably what you're finding, grassroots, which is wonderful, because that's why your uncle is now getting great service.
Yep, exactly. Great. Thank you. Wonderful topic.